This will be recorded. And so if you have colleagues that maybe weren't able to join us, this will be available on our website, and I'll be getting that information at the end, but you'll let them know that it is recorded. So I think we should begin. Jane, are you ready to go?
I am ready to go.
So let me just introduce you while she's going and stealing my share. Let me introduce you guys to Jane Montero. She is the president-elect of the Michigan Art Education Association. So I am really happy and very excited to have Jane with us tonight to talk about this particular topic of visual journals, the what, why, and how. And I will also say that if you're interested in learning more about the Michigan Art Education Association, you'd like to become a member, you'd like to take advantage of some of their events and those sorts of things, I will be sending that information to you at the completion of this session as well. So, good evening, Jane. How are you?
I am great. And thank you, Chad, and welcome everybody. I don't know about you, but this day I just wanted to just go, right? We had a little snow yesterday, but you know what? I've looked ahead. Do you know what's coming on Saturday and Sunday? It's like 75 degrees. And I'm originally from California, so I am loving that. So yes, as Chad said, I am currently the Michigan Art Education Association president-elect. That's a 2-year term, and then after that, I will take over as president. I'm also this year's National Middle Level Art Educator of the Year. And last fall, I was named Michigan Middle Level Art Educator of the Year. So I have to tell you, at 60 years old and 32 years of teaching, it's really been a great year. So I just wanted to share that with everybody because, you know, it takes a long time sometimes to get a little bit of recognition. And I'm very happy and humbled and honored for all of that, truly. So I hope everybody can see this. So what we're talking about here is visual journals. And I personally have a long history of sketching for fun, for out of boredom, and to challenge myself. And my career in public education, I didn't start with teaching art. I've taught science, I've taught math, taught literature, I've taught social studies. I even taught physical education briefly. I had to teach my students how to dissect a frog one time. And I taught art originally as an elective. And then when I added my single subject certification, it's a little different in California than Michigan. Then I moved to just teaching art. So we moved from California to Michigan in 2000, and I taught 12 years prior to that in California. And I've been here ever since. So I teach in Dexter at Creekside Intermediate School, and I teach 5th and 6th grade. I'm the only art teacher in our building, so I see everybody. And we're on a rotation schedule, so I see everybody for a certain number of weeks, and then another batch comes my way. So for me personally, I've always felt most at home sketching. And really, this came into focus for me during COVID-19. Because at that time, you know, if we can even think back to what the world was like before that time, I didn't take a lot of time to just sit at home. And so when we were at home, I kind of got bored and I just started looking around to see what I could maybe sketch or what I could do. So, sorry, I just hit the wrong button. There we go. So these are some things that I've done, and I do not consider myself a fine artist. I consider myself a graphic designer. I was trained at Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, which is a competitor of CCS. And so, yeah, I can draw. My husband was an automotive designer. That's where we met, also 32 years ago. But for me, it's always been about communication. And that's what visual journals are. So if you look on the left, I circled this one with a little red oval because when I was putting together this presentation, it dawned on me that way, way, way back in 1994, I kept a little sketchbook where I would draw things every time we were on a vacation. And that's a drawing I did of a waterfall. It was man-made with some stones and things, and it was in the lobby or the outdoor area of a hotel in Kananaskis, Canada, where we had gone on vacation in the summer. And I look at that and I can remember exactly where I was sitting. I can remember exactly the sounds of the water. And I remember trying to figure out how to draw that waterfall. And that's the power of drawing, whether you can draw well or not. We remember. And that's what's so great about visual journals. So I just wanted to kind of quickly show you these. The one next to that, the art supplies, I did that right at the start of the pandemic. Well, then I decided to challenge myself and I decided to do a still life sketch every day. And these are just some of them. So I'm always drinking water. I have a little water here. And so in a lot of my sketches, I would just set a little glass of water. And I gave them little titles. These weren't meant to be funny or poetic or anything. They were just my little memory. And I would look around and grab some things and put them all over the house. So this one with the tennis racket was a tennis racket, 2 baseball mitts, and a glass of water. And then if you go underneath the waterfall one, this one I got quite complicated, I realized looking at it now. I have a Lar bar, an iPhone, 2 watches, old binoculars, and a glass of water. And then the one with the dog's paw, that one was interesting because I was getting tired of doing this. It was days 22, 23, and 24. And I needed some inspiration. So I decided to do small ones. So I did sleeping pens. They were sitting down on my keypad of my laptop. And then my sleeping paw of my dog. And then a sleeping outlet. What I did was I turned my chair and looked at different views. And then the other thing about being bored, and I hope you're not bored right now, but what I do in Zoom meetings a lot is I sketch the screen. And that is really hard because you know what happens? More people come in and out of a meeting and people change position. So you'll start with top left and then all of a sudden top left will be middle bottom or something. But that's just a little bit of kind of what I've done personally with sketching. But here's some more I guess, more scientific information about visual journals. So they're a way to record information by drawing symbols instead of writing everything down word for word. These journals capture our thoughts instantly and have been shown to increase our ability to remember and recall facts from class lectures, like my waterfall picture. This is a quote from Edutopia. Unlike listening to a lecture or viewing an image, activities in which students passively absorb information, drawing is active. It forces students to grapple with what they're learning and reconstruct it in a way that makes sense to them. And in Yogi Terada's article, The Science of Drawing and Memory, he stated it's long been known that drawing something helps a person remember it. And Terada further noted that drawing is superior to activities such as reading or writing, don't tell people, because it forces the person to process information in multiple ways, visually, kinesthetically, and semantically. So based on a series of experiments, Terada noted, researchers found drawing information to be a powerful way to boost memory, increasing recall by nearly double. Okay, back to my waterfall thing, that was in 1994. We're in 2022, and I still remember so much from that moment. So one more quote here. Drawing is a powerful memory tool because it requires elaboration on the meaning of the term and translating the definition to a new form, as in a picture. When we draw, we encode the memory in a very rich way, layering together the visual memory of the image, the kinesthetic memory of our hand drawing the image. I remember that a lot. And the semantic memory that is invoked when we engage in meaning making. In combination, this greatly increases the likelihood that the concept being drawn will later be recalled, right? We do that all the time in science experiments, right? So where do you begin if you don't know how to draw? That's the kicker, right? What are you going to do? Well, for me, sorry, hold on a minute. I'm messing with my screen. There we go. So for me, I sketch in the margins. This was a little notebook I kept. I had the privilege to go to the Edible Schoolyard program in Berkeley, California. Oh, maybe about 10 years ago. We were starting a school garden. And so I listened to the lecture and I was thinking little ideas. What could I do? And they were talking about things like having a really cool sign on your door, greeting people with a cup of coffee, you know, being aware of the time. And I drew these little things on the side. That's not like official technical sketch notes, but it's my notes. And so this is kind of a way to start. If you don't know where to start, try drawing something little. So we're going to do a little practice here. I hope everybody's ready. If you can grab a piece of paper, okay, any kind of piece of paper. Look, sometimes I use the little notepad. You don't have to have a big giant piece of paper. And if you can divide it into 4 boxes like I've shown, and label each square like I've shown. And I'm going to give you, you're going to be surprised at how fast you do this. I'm going to give you 1 minute to draw these. Okay? On your marks, get set, go. All right, it hasn't even been a minute yet, and I bet you're done. Right? And we're done because those are easy images. So if you don't know where to start or how to even get rolling with this, I bet regardless of the grade level you teach and regardless of the subject that you teach, that you could just put those up on the board and in 2 seconds, you're going to have something like this, right? So this is a way to begin because we can't all start drawing like Da Vinci, right? So, and it's not so much about drawing. You got to remember it's about communicating. So we can take this a little bit further. This time, you can use the same piece of paper, but you may want to get a slightly bigger piece of paper. Like if you're in a computer room, grab a piece of computer paper or notebook paper. I'm going to leave this up so you can see it. You don't have to write all these down. You can just kind of look at them and start. And I'm going to give you a few minutes to do this. So you want to rely on the 5 basic elements. You want to think about a square, a circle, a triangle, a line, or a dot. When I give this to my students as an image bank, here's what I tell them. Don't get stuck on one of those words. If you can't figure out what to draw, skip to another one. So I'm going to give everybody, let me get my little clock going here. I'm going to give everybody about 5 minutes and let's just see how far you can get. Okay? So ready, go. Oh, can I enlarge this? I don't think I can enlarge this, but I can type the words in there if you can't see them. Okay. I see somebody's comment there. Let me just, I'm going to type some of these in here. Sorry. I'm afraid if I start messing with my screen, I'm going to mess something up unless Chad wants to take it away to try to enlarge it. I'm sorry.
I'm going to drop the link to this presentation in the chat in just a second.
Oh, great.
So you can
Okay.
follow along as well.
I'm trying to type away here. Okay, those are all the ones I put in there. I think I've got them all in there. So for some of you fast sketchers, feel free to get up and grab a sip of water. We have about 2.5 minutes left to see how far you can get here. I should have had one of those clocks, the Jeopardy clock. That would have been really good right about here. All right, under 2 minutes. All right, last minute here, I think. All right, we are under 30 seconds. And we're winding down. We're getting closer. If you're done, reach your arms up and give yourself a big stretch. That's what I always have my students do when they're done. Big wake up stretch, we call it. Okay, so let's see how you did. Here's what I'd like for you to do. Take a look at your sketches, and I don't know how far you got, but circle or star your favorite one. And we're going to do a quick chat poll. I'm not going to do a poll. I don't know how to do a poll on my end, but write the one that you feel you did the best on. Just drop it in the chat really fast. And let's see how many people had the same similar ones. Okay, I see a boat. Cat. Tractor. Oh, another cat. Light bulb. Igloo. Coffee mug. All right. Laptop. Couple laptops. Couple boats. Clock. Oh, cup. Yeah. Train. Man, you need to teach me. Trains are my hard ones. Dog. Clock. Yeah. Oh, planets. All right. These are good. I don't see anybody putting down a hammer and a wrench. Were those hard? Oh man, a mug. Okay, so here's kind of how I started mine. And I'm really not good at transportation vehicles. So my husband knows that. But when you look at your drawings, would they, I like that chat. Yeah, my car looks like it's run into the wall there. When you look at what you've done, would they communicate that symbol? And more than likely they would, right? So when we're thinking about note-taking, visual note-taking, it's not always about the artistic merit. Yes, that makes things look more fun, but you or your students are doing this for their memory. So they're going to know what they were drawing, right? It's going to help them communicate. So these are fun. And these, by the way, I'm going to refer to this book again, but I'm going to hold this up. It's in the references, but this is the book. It's called the Sketchnote Handbook, and it's by Mike Road. And again, this is in my references at the end, but he has that page that I've used. He also, take a look at this. He has a whole, I don't know how well you can see this because I'm kind of lame over here, but There are 2 pages of those to do. So what do I do with these? Well, sometimes I just have these, obviously I'm in an art room. So sometimes, yeah, awesome for that book. Sometimes I just have these lying around and have students do them whenever they want to. So they're very fun ways to sort of get people thinking visually, okay? So one of the big questions becomes to have students do live sketching or after the fact. And what I say here really is it depends on your goal. What you see on the left is a live drawing that I did. And it was when we had a social justice professional development day back in August or early September. And they were going over 14 guidelines. And I thought, I want to capture that visually. So to do something live, you're really, really under the pressure zone, right? Because they're going to change their information very fast. If you were taking visual notes on everything that I'm saying, that's very hard to do, but you get really good at listening. So what I did, I kind of did a little cheat sheet for myself. I wrote them down like a little key on that page. You can see I drew like a little piece of paper. And I have number 1, work to connect your head and your heart. And then if you look, I drew a picture that shows a head and a heart, and I kind of wrapped a ribbon around it. So I went through kind of after the fact and did my drawing. So it was kind of live-ish, if you know what I mean. The one on the right was an after the fact. And this was one of my sketch journals that I created when my husband and I went to Europe 2 summers ago. We flew out of Indianapolis to Charles de Gaulle Airport. And that was day 1. And I took pictures. We were traveling around the Notre Dame and some other places. And then I got back to the hotel room and I just wanted to draw them because I wanted to kind of relive it and experience it. So that was kind of one that I had started. So when you're trying to decide live or reflective, I usually have students take notes, and then an assignment is turn that into a visual sketch note. But again, that's up to you. You can try it both ways and sort of see. So these are some common symbols that I use. Arrows. We can all draw arrows, right? And this is something that, anybody from the youngest grades up, draw an arrow. So they can get it. They're going to link things. They're going to emphasize things and give your viewer directions on how to view your page. Common symbols, clouds, starburst for emphasis. Now, one thing I will say, those of you with older age students, and by older age, believe it or not, I'm talking about 10 years and up, because my students can do this and they're 10. But if you have a Chromebook in your classroom or if students use a computer, they can do a sketch note via computer. One of the things that I do a lot of is Google Drawing, and I've written a lot of articles that have been published about that. And the reason why I'm saying that to you is a lot of our classrooms, students have Chromebooks. And I was always scared to have them bring them into the art room. And then when COVID hit, that's all we had. And so I taught myself Google Drawing, and subsequently I've taught students how to use these tools. So if you have older kids now, I'm talking about much older, I'm talking about 8th grade through high school, this may be a great way for them. Have them do it on the computer, and you might already, right? I'm probably saying things all of you are like, yeah, we know already. But anyway, they can do different shapes and things to emphasize different subject areas. Okay, fonts. And this is another one that you can go crazy with on the computer. And it's a little harder if they're hand-drawn, but you can talk to students about using all caps. We talk about that when we're texting people. Don't ever use all caps. It's like you're yelling, right? But when you want to emphasize something, maybe you do all caps for things, lowercase for other things, right? We talk about quiet type. We talk about loud type. And then, making it meaningful. So I thought a lot about this, and I thought, there are going to be people in this presentation that don't teach art. There are going to be people in this presentation that do teach art. There are going to be people in this presentation that may not teach, but just wanted to be here, right? So how can you make it meaningful? Well, science is a natural fit because presentations, writing up experiments, you can just, they already do that, okay? Language arts, literature, another perfect fit. How many times did I assign when I was teaching literature? Book reports, right? So why couldn't they be, and you may already do this, right? Why can't it be a visual journal of each chapter or different themes in the book? You know, that's another way to take it. Math, yeah, right, definitely. If you're teaching addition and subtraction, I'm going to keep it very basic, right? Can't they draw things and show how things can add up? Can't they divide things? And I'm sure you're already doing that, right? We always talk about the importance of hands-on and visual. Bring those together.
You know, Jane, this reminds me of you know, probably one of my favorite lessons as an English teacher. You know, and basically the concept was that, you know, where does the balloon go when you let it go, a helium balloon? And so we did a whole series of experiments. This is in English, and we did the, you know, calculating on in terms of how quickly the balloon will rise, you know, how much it can carry. You know, wind speed, direction. I contacted the airports to get like wind speed, direction at different altitudes, so that we could, you know, put all this data together to create a plot, you know, a map for where this balloon will go if we let it go, which we actually did. And we put little cards on them with stamps so that we could get them back if they were found. But then the writing part of it, and this is where the visual journal part comes in, is that I really asked the students to imagine the once we created the flight path, at least what we predicted it to be. Imagine this experience. You know, what is it like to be at that altitude? You know, temperature. What are the sensations? What is the balloon seeing as it's going across? You know, and I had the students kind of draw that, right? And I think it made and you can hear me talking about it now because it was such a memorable experience to see and have the students both do something that was scientific, right? And then use their language arts skills to describe, you know, what was going on, and then use some visual skills to then, illustrate their thinking, which I thought was fantastic. And just a side note, the calculations actually were pretty darn accurate. And we had a balloon come back as far as Cleveland, Ohio, is released from Grand Rapids, by the way. So I really appreciate how you are talking about how this can be applied to different subject areas, because it really does create for a much deeper learning experience.
Yeah, you're so right, Chad. And the thing is, I always tell my students when I teach a lesson on Leonardo da Vinci, and I talk about how he was an inventor as well as an artist. And I talk to them about how in science, you know, if you're a field scientist, you were always out there with your clipboard drawing pictures. We're probably taking them with cell phones now, but still, that's a whole nother, you know, like medical illustration. My father was an orthopedic surgeon, and he would always have me try to draw things he was going to present a paper about. I'm like, no, I'm not a medical illustrator. But the point being, those are perfect subjects to tie in drawing and any of the arts. And quite honestly, I personally, as an art teacher, I don't mind when I see homeroom teachers including art. In fact, I love that, because aren't we about the more art, the better? You know, like I just feel like, you know, spread all of that around. Okay, so here we go. This is your task, folks. You're going to have a little more time than 5 minutes. Okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to think about if you were going to give visual directions from your school to your home, and you're going to draw it on a piece of paper instead of writing it out step by step. Now, there's a couple rules, and then I'm going to set you free here for a few minutes. Don't right now, because I'm going to have you include, you're going to be allowed to put this into a Jamboard. But just in terms of confidentiality and privacy, don't put your home address on something right now. Like, in other words, if you're going to share this on Jamboard, you don't need to put your actual address of your house. I didn't on mine. I made up a fake place. It's a real school and it's a real direction, but fake. Okay. So what I want you to think about is, and you may or may not have a long commute. So your directions may be pretty easy. So if you live across the street from your school, that doesn't count. If you live across the street from your school, you're going to have to do from your school to the nearest grocery store or something. Okay. So what I want you to do is step one is to draw on a piece of paper. And again, I've got mine drawn on a piece of paper in here. Then you're going to go over that with a pen, if you have a black pen or anything like that, so you can make it look a little better. Okay. So I'm going to start by giving everybody 5 minutes. And if that's not enough time, I'll call time and you can put in the chat box and just say, no, I need more time. Okay. So when you get it done, don't put it on Jamboard yet. Hold off first. So on your marks, get set, go. So 2-minute warning. Would you like some more time? I can give you a couple more minutes. Just put a yes in the chat box if you need more time. Okay. How about we go another, I'll talk about Jamboard in just a sec. How about we go another 5 minutes, and that way if you get finished, you can get up and get a sip of water or something, and then we'll check out and I'll explain Jamboard after that. So about 3 more minutes and we'll see where everybody is. Yes, Lori, I see your message. It is harder than it sounds. About a minute and a half left. And don't worry if you can't get done. Okay, let's just see how, at least how it began. Okay, so a little bit more time here. I really do need that Jeopardy clock, Chad. That would be really good. I got to figure out how to get that. I don't know.
Okay, version 2.0, we'll do that.
Okay. All right, so we are under a minute. Sorry, go ahead.
I said I would add music here, but I don't want to disturb the creative process.
That is true.
I was working really hard. My drawing may not reflect the effort that I put in.
Yes, yes.
But it takes effort.
It does indeed. We're getting close.
It made me think about it though. I'm like,
Well, it's hard. I know it is hard. I didn't want to make everybody totally stressed out after teaching all day. It's hard enough, right? All right, we are almost down to the wire here. And okay, so I'm back. First of all, yes, this is hard because what you are doing is think about what your brain is having to do. You are having to, first of all, recall, because you weren't thinking about this when you were at school or when you were driving home from school. And so now you're having to kind of go back into that situation and retrace your path. It's kind of like if you lose something and you've got to go back and retrace your steps, right? My mom used to always say, well, retrace your steps, right? And you're like, it's not that easy. So I'm going to show you mine, and then I'm going to talk about Jamboard. Okay. So I guess I'm a little bit of an advantage because I thought up the assignment, but I was going to do something like draw how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But that's so like we'd all have the same basic thing, right? So to make it unique, this is why I came up with this one. Okay, so here was my first one. And I'm looking down on it as a little bird. It's like a map. Okay, so yeah, so I started on the left with my school. And it's not, look, there's no north, south, east, or west on here. That I couldn't even get that figure. I mean, I do know, but I couldn't really get it figured out on here because then my paper would be turned sideways and everything. And so there were issues, but there's my school, there's my parking lot, and I have a start button. Okay, then I used the power of the arrow, right? And I bet you did too. Okay, so then I started thinking, okay, well, we passed the grocery store and then we turn onto Zeeb Road, and oh, another good visual. So you might have been thinking of good visuals. Railroad track, we pass a railroad track and then we turn and then we look for the lake. So that's fine, right? And I mean, that's gonna be fine. But then I look at it and I say, now from a visual sketch note sort of theoretical process. Can I make it stronger? Okay. So this is where in your class, if students are doing this type of thing for any kind of assignment, give them this assignment, right? See how it goes. Older kids, maybe younger kids aren't going to know. They're going to get on a bus and the bus is going to go wherever the bus goes and they're going to get off the bus or whatever, all right? So if they drive though, they're going to be able to do this probably. Okay, so I worked on it again. And then I thought maybe I need to make the arrows darker and that'll help because that'll bring more attention to following the arrows. Well, then I thought, what about adding color? So my final one, I added color. So when we talk about the power of color, everybody knows about a highlighter pen. So we know that yellow is a good color that works. So I started thinking, well, oh, what if I go over this? Now I just used color pencil because I was using my sketchbook right here, like I'm holding up. And I didn't want marker to go through my paper. So this then becomes a materials situation. I didn't want to use Sharpie pen because I didn't want to go through my paper. Or in my classroom, I don't want it to go under my paper onto the desk and leave black dots everywhere. So some of this becomes sort of technical stuff. But the use of yellow is great. Okay, here's another thing that I did, and you can probably see on here what I did. I then used the same colors for my start star as I did for my end area. These are like little things that you might not always get. I then decided to make the directions cloud more obvious. So I used color pencil, okay, to kind of color in a little bit. So those are some things that I did. And again, this is not meant to take hours and days and weeks and months. It's just meant to be one assignment and one way to get students thinking about it. Now, somebody asked about Jamboard, and my idea here was if you at any time during, because this is one assignment that we just now did, and we'll talk a little bit more about it in a second. Oh, it says to edit access. Okay. I will have to, I'll fix that in just a second. May need to go out of my screen share and I can fix that for you because I don't know if I can fix it without being in, but I'll check. Or I can do it at the very end. If you take a picture of anything that you've made here and you can post an image on Jamboard. Okay. So I can show you that when we get a tad farther here. Yeah, I need to give you access. So let me, Chad, do you want me to exit screen share and do that or do it at the end?
Either way, you can do it at the end if you wish.
I'll do it at the end. That way I don't mess up because I'm afraid I might mess something up. Okay, so just hold that thought. So how many of you, if you want to put this in the chat box, how many of you found this? A couple of you said hard. How many of you found it hard as well? If you didn't put the word hard in there, you can put, yes, you found it hard or something. Yeah. Challenging, yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I don't live that far away from school. My commute is maybe 10 minutes. Oh, somebody said easy. All right. Okay, that's good. That's good. So some of you, yeah. And, you know, just think about it. Now, so you can do this with any grade. Okay. So let me move on a little bit. Okay, this is going to take a little bit of thinking here. So I'm going to give you an example, and I really want you to really kind of remain open-minded to this idea. And I tried to pick something that you might not know about. And I mean, you might if you're a professional card player. But this is going to be a way to create sketch notes based on content. You don't have to do this right this second because I'm going to walk you through the steps. So here's some information, and there's a link, and maybe I've got some of the article in here, and I don't know, Chad, if you can get a chance to put the link for that whole article in there or not. You don't have to have the whole article. You can work with just this part. So here's a little bit of information. I thought it would be really fun to look up the invention of a deck of cards. Why, you may ask? Because in my 6th grade class, we're doing a lesson on printmaking. And so this got me looking into the history of printing, which took me back to, all sorts of things in ancient civilizations. And then we got going into Germany and how they created the first deck of cards that was sold. So that led me down this path. So here's what I found out. Playing cards were invented by the Chinese before AD 1000. They reached Europe around 1360, not directly from China, but from an empire in Egypt. The history of suit marks demonstrates a fascinating interplay between words, shapes, and concepts. The Egyptian suits were goblets, gold coins, swords, and polo sticks. Well, polo was unknown in Europe at that time. So they transformed them into batons or staves, which together with swords, cups, and coins are still the traditional suit marks of Italian and Spanish cards. 15th century German card makers experimented with suits vaguely based on Italian ones, eventually settling for acorns, leaves, hearts, and bells, which still remain in use. Around 1480, the French started producing playing cards by means of stencils and simplified the German shapes into truffle, which is a clover. I would say peak, I don't know if it's PQ, pike heads, core, which is hearts, and carreau, which are paving tiles. English card makers used these shapes but varied the names. Spade may reflect the earlier use of Spanish suit marks, from espadas, meaning swords, and clubs are what the Spanish suit of staves actually look like. Diamond is not only the shape of the paving tile, but it may perpetuate connotations of wealth from the older suit of coins. Okay, so if you were to give this to a group of students, and if you wanted them to create a sketch note on this information, here is what you could try. You could have them jot down the important words, right? You could give them a copy of this paper after you've presented it and have them highlight away, right? Which is fine. If this was the first time you wanted to practice this, well, let's say you've done something like directions to and from one place to another, okay? You could do the old thing where you are going to count off into groups of 3, and person number 1, you're reading the first paragraph, not the playing cards sentence, but the first paragraph that starts with the word history. And then number 2, you're going to do the 15th century, and number 3, you're going to do English card makers. And then all of you can look at the introductory sentence, right? You could do that. And you could have each person do their own illustrations for their own paragraph, right? Or you could have all the ones get together and do it, all the 2s get together, you know, so there's a lot of ways you could sort of jigsaw this around if you wanted to, okay? Well, before I have you do something with this here, this is an example of the oldest full deck of playing cards. And this is owned by the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and I've given you the photo credit. And there is one more link that I've put in here also. What I would like for you to do, and I'm going to give you more time than 5 minutes. I highlighted the words, and I'll go back to that page in a minute, and I'll leave that message up there. I went back and took the words I had highlighted, and I wrote them down here. And I thought, what are some of the main things? I want to talk about China and Egypt, Germany, France, and England, maybe. Obviously, I want to look for a deck of cards. I found it interesting that the symbols were different. Okay. So I'm going to go back to that one in just a minute, so you don't have to worry about it. So how could you visually show any of that information? Okay, so let me back up. I'm going to leave the screen up with what I highlighted for you. So when you take a look at that, and bonus points if you go to any of the links that Chad put in there, because I'll give you a big hint. The second link he put in there, the history of playing cards, is the one I used in addition to this information. Okay, so now is a really good time for you to get another piece of paper, and I really hope you'll try it. Okay, I really hope you will. And if you just need to take a break, that's okay, but I really want you to give this a try. So I'm going to give everybody, we're going to go with 10 minutes. Actually, no, we're going to go with 12 minutes. And we're going to see how you could illustrate any of that. Okay. Now, if any of you have questions, the teacher and me, if you have questions, drop them in the chat box right now, but let's just give it a go. Okay, so let's see how it rolls. So we're going to have, I got to just check my time. We're going to have 12 minutes. And I can't see if there's any questions in there. So go for it. This is a 6-minute warning. We've got 6 more minutes and we'll see what you have here. So we have about 2.5 minutes left. I kind of messed up my time the first time on this part, so we'll see how far you get, and we'll look at them in just when we get finished with this session. Right, in about 30 more seconds, and we're going to move on and see how this experiment went. All right, so how did that go for everybody? Can you put something in the chat? Was this easier or harder than the directions assignment? Oh, much harder. Easier. Oh, it was really hard. I enjoyed it. Easier, harder. Loved it. Okay. So I would be willing to bet that your students would have similar reactions, right? You're going to have the kids who absolutely, love it, can't get enough of it. And then you're going to have the kids that don't know where to start. And then you're going to have the kids that are sort of like, so we're kind of all over the map. And for me, coming from an art background, what I was excited about with this assignment was the visual, because I could clearly see, and we're familiar enough with cards. We're not familiar with all the history behind it, but it's really interesting to me. And I tell students a lot about, when we talk about printmaking, how expensive cards were originally, because a lot of them were hand painted. And now, I mean, I don't know about you, this is going to date myself, but I remember in the old days of getting on an airplane and they'd give you a little deck of cards. So anyway, it's just something to kind of think about, that cards are everywhere, right? We take them for granted a little bit too. Okay, so here's what I did. I'm going to just jump out and share. So here's what I came up with. I decided my visual would be drawings of cards. So then I started with China, and in the second article link that Chad put in the box, there was a really cool little paragraph of information that said the original cards that China invented were very small. They were 1 inch wide by 2 inches long. So that's why when I started with China, I drew that weird little thing, and they put gold coins, or they put, printing of coins on there. And they also drew little man, a little character. So that was what I put for China. Then when I got to Spain, I was like, oh, so I read that in the information, they had a crown, they used a sword, and they used a stave. Okay. Hi, Susanna, by the way, I know you. They only had 40 cards in their deck of cards. They didn't have the 10s, the 9s, or the 8s. I never knew that. And then England really got going with the suits as we know them. So that's really cool. And, it covers a wide, okay, cards go back to China, which now you can really go back into talking about the Silk Road. I mean, it can go like, this could be like a huge thing, right? So I just found that very interesting. And when we get finished up here, I'll fix the access on the Jamboard. I'd love to see what you came up with, because this just could be so much fun. So we just sort of talked about that. So give yourself a Tuesday afternoon pat on the back, right? You did it, right? So here's what I want to kind of wrap things up with here. How to make this meaningful. What can you do when you think about this? If you give an assignment to students, let's say you're teaching language arts or literature. Let me just go like literature, English lit, or something very high school. Are kids going to take it seriously? And what do you need to do to have it become a serious assignment? Is it worth points? Is it part of their grade? Is it part of participation? Is it actual an assignment? You can go all over the map with that. For me personally, I grade everything point-based anyway. Everything in my art room is rubric point-based. So a sketch note could be 5 points, and they're not trying to reach a magic number. They're just trying to earn all of their points out of whatever the points are. So let's say you want to start sketch notes, and let's say you do this as a whole class. Then you can talk about how many points would that be worth. Have students, we're always talking about empowering students, see what they say. Is it harder for them to do this than to just take notes? But think about it. A lot of kids have trouble spelling, but they're great drawing. Could they do this on a computer? Absolutely. So for kids who can't draw, this is one of my big, huge things in the world of art. By the time kids are in 5th and 6th grade, they know if they can draw or they can't. Honestly, they do. So if we always push them to have to draw everything, who are we helping? Not them. So why not allow them to do this type of thing on the computer? You will get fabulous results. I get kids sending me things all the time that they've done on the computer just for fun, they say, right? So I just wanted to touch on that assessment a little bit. I know that we're winding down on time. I did not make this, but this is kind of cool, except I have trouble following it. It's like a bunch of weird spinning clocks with the numbers, but I do like what it says. The author of this, her name is on the side, Sylvia Rosenthal Tolosano. I found this doing a Google search online. You will find bazillions, bazillions of billions, zillions of things. Okay. So if you look at this, what I like about it though, is what it says. Look at number 1. You don't have to be an artist. You really, really don't. Because I find sketch notes harder than doing an art project. And I've done this all my life. I've been drawing since my aunt taught me how to draw a cat when I was 8 years old. So look at the second thing. It's about ideas, connections, process, right? Organization. How many students struggle with organization? All of them, right? How many of you in your homes, if you still have your children in your house, how many of you see them struggle with organization? A lot, okay? So it helps them with that, right? It's a life skill. Number 3, what can be sketch noted? Look at those things down there. A blog post, a birthday card, books, TED Talks, right? So if you want to take a minute and put in the chat box, how might you use this in your classroom? And just put any little thoughts in there. I'd be curious to see. Yeah, or you can also unmute. Yeah, sure. If you want to just unmute and speak, that's fine too.
And Jane, while folks are composing your thoughts, and I already see some stuff popping up in the chat. One thing that occurred to me is you were talking about this in the difficulty involved. To me, that seemed like that was really part of the process. And really creating that opportunity to think.
Mhm.
I really appreciate what you said in terms of like giving different types of students ways to engage the material other than through like written text notes. And to me, as a language arts teacher, I often required students to take notes, as part of the classroom process. I hadn't thought about saying, if you wanted to create a visual note, a visual sketchbook, because the kids are doodling anyway, like
Mhm.
I would accept that, like I would like accept that as part of your notes because they are for you. And it would really be quite fascinating for me to see what they come up with, like how do they interpret this information, just as and this is something that we do like in terms of assessment, like pre-assessment, and we did sessions on pre-assessment and some other workshops in terms of how do we determine the students' preparation to learn, like what are they grasping and what should we kind of emphasize or reteach. This is a great way to kind of gather some of that information in a way that even isn't graded. Say, hey, do something that visualizes this information for me, just so I can see what you're getting from it,
Right.
as a pre-assessment. And I think that is a great tool. And I think I love what we're seeing in the chat. Maybe you want to pick up on some of that.
Yeah, I do. I see these bell ringer time. I love this from Lois. I hope I'm saying your name right. I might have students sketchnote a page about a new assignment as it is introduced. That's kind of what you were just referring to. Leah says, after reading a section, have students draw one main idea. Yeah, that's great. Sarah, contemporary artist notes, absolutely process notes. Weekly schedule or reading group. Oh, that's cool. Couldn't you? I could really see that as a schedule. Draw out your schedule if that's what you're referring to. Vocabulary. I see a lot about vocabulary. A couple of you have mentioned that. Yeah, capturing important moments from novels. When I used to teach literature, we did double entry journals, right? And so on one side, they're writing a quote, and on the other side, they were interpreting that quote, but writing. So now, why couldn't they draw that interpretation, right? Reviewing and connecting lessons. Oh, that's awesome, Rebecca, about your students, showing how they take notes at different stages. Yeah, these are wonderful. Yeah, I agree, Luann, about, she says for students who struggle with learning disabilities, visual journals help them put together processes because they start out differently than most students. Sketching ideas can help them to organize their thoughts. Yeah, math journals. Absolutely. Color pen. Yeah, color pens and pencils. And I think a lot of you, I'm sure, know this, but in my building, I did not realize this until like during COVID, actually, that our front office people, they order color pencils and crayons for homeroom teachers all the time. And they keep them like in the closet. It's not a secret, but I just didn't know it because I was ordering my own supplies. But so knowing that homeroom teachers can reach out and use those now, see, now they can add more color if they're worried about the budget or things like that. Let's see this one. Let's see, Jody, I'm looking at this one. Can you help me, Jody, with DK? I don't know what DK students are. Am I the last one at the party to know this?
It's developmental kindergarten.
Ah, okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. And draw whatever parts of the story they choose, then share. Oh, that's awesome. Oh, yeah. See, comparing it to what illustrators do, that's just great. So I really think, I mean, look, you all could lead this presentation, not me. You all are showing your your wisdom here. So that's a really, this is a helpful page. And one of the things I did, and you, I'm sure you do this, right? Look things up on Pinterest, look things up as just a Google search. And these are free. Look, if this page I'm sharing with you is free. I didn't have to do anything fancy. I just clicked it. And I don't cut off people's names. If they're on there, you got to give them credit, right? So these are some books. I know we are, I do want to have time for questions. I do want to open up the Jamboard too and leave a few minutes for that. But these are 4 books, and you may know of these people. First of all, I have to talk about The Back of the Napkin by Dan Roam. He's done TED Talks. And if you've ever seen him, it is so cool. He got started just with a little napkin and drawing something at a meeting. And so he's written this whole book on the back of the napkin for solving problems. So wouldn't it be cool to give your class, give them all little napkins, like cocktail size napkins? I mean, don't tell them they're cocktail size napkins, but like little napkins, have them draw on there. Change the surface in which they're thinking they have to draw, right? And then that gets into even more. Does it have to be drawn? Could it still be an artistic creation? Could they? This gets into Legos, right? Or other ways to build an idea if you have kids that even struggle with drawing. Visual thinking, that's another good book. The Doodle Revolution is huge. There is a 10-year-old, he's probably 11 now. You might have read about him in England. He got in trouble in school for doodling. He went home and told his parents, not because he wanted the teacher to get in trouble, but just to say that he got in trouble. His parents have a friend who owns a restaurant, and they let him doodle all over the walls of the restaurant, and he's become super famous. So it's really cool. I'll have to get his name. I can share it with you, Chad. I can't pull it off the top of my head, but I share it with my students. The Art of Visual Note Taking. See, I'm working backwards here. I do not have that book, but it looks pretty interesting to me. And then the Sketchnote workbook, that is part 2 of the Mike Rhodes one. It's the same author, which leads me to this. Like, wow, okay, sketch notes, visual journals have just exploded over the last several years. And I think the reason why is because any of us who have done any kind of drawing for anything, we remember it. It's really just as easy as that. I mean, I think about my waterfall picture that I showed you at the beginning. That was a long time ago. It was 1994. That was before we had our kids who are now in their 20s, right? And I still remember so much about that. I even remember when I bought the sketchbook in the little gift shop at the hotel. And I remember being a little bummed because I had a blue ballpoint pen and I really wanted black. Right, so it helps us remember. So these are things that I think, wherever you go and whatever you do, honestly, give it a try. because, or, if you're too afraid to try it, you've all been here, but have your students try it and just go, oh, look at how great, I always tell them I have trouble drawing animals. I can't draw animals very well. How do you draw people? Well, in this book, he has a whole, and I'm not hired by him to say this. I just really like this book. There's pages in here on how to draw people in action. I use that in my art room, not even related to sketch notes. Okay. So I know, Chad, we've got some time. We have about 8 minutes. And what I would love to do is, if you can take over the screen, I will give access to that Jamboard link and we'll try the Jamboard again. Would that work? Or do I have to?
You got it. You got it.
Okay.
So I will just do that. And then I will stop share.
Cool. Okay. And I will.
Back here together. So while she's working on that, again, I really am curious to know more, if folks are participating here, want to share some more of their thoughts about how this can be applied in their classroom, because just during this presentation, I think about, it doesn't have to always even be drawing. The idea that it's visual, maybe it's cutting clips, images out of the magazines. We've all kind of done those kind of collage type projects, but to do them in relationship to some sort of subject matter that is intended to convey an idea, I think that's really fantastic. And I think as educators, allowing ourselves to engage in assessing learning and assessing what is learned, as opposed to trying to produce a grade. Now, by the way, you can create points for this, right? But creating opportunities for students to demonstrate learning in various modes, I think, is really what makes this super powerful, and it can be applied to any subject matter. And so I think we got the link on there. Let's try it again here.
Yes, and I'm going to look and see.
Okay, so how do we do this?
Okay, so here's what you do. If you have a cell phone, you can snap a picture of what you've done. And if you can somehow quickly email it to yourself.
Okay.
Because you need to get it onto Jamboard. And I will show you if I can pull mine up here. I'm going to grab my image. And all you need to do, I'll share my screen with you in just a second. I just need to find what I am going to share here. Oh, good. Somebody's already got theirs on there.
Oh, look, we got some learners here. All right. Yeah. And then, so once we've emailed it to ourselves, then what do we do?
Then what you do is you go on to Jamboard. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm still messing with my screen here. Let me get out of the way here. You go into Jamboard, and on the bottom left are your tools. And you'll see the one that looks like the little picture image. It's the same type of icon that you see on Google Drawing. It's underneath the one that's like a piece of paper. Do you see it? And then you can click that and you can upload your picture.
So you'll have to email it to yourself and then save it to your computer, of course. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And if that's too difficult and you don't want to do that, what you could do is you can just take a Post-it note and you can just write something down. So if you see, I'm going to share can I share my screen again, Chad, to show the Jamboard? Let me see. Okay. All right. So everybody should be seeing the Jamboard right now. Here's the beauty of a Jamboard. Anybody can resize, right? So I'm moving some of yours around. Oh, look at the cards one. Wow. This is super cool. Yeah. So I'm just going to move them. If you see yours moving, that's me doing that. I have to police this seriously with my students. I say, I'm the only one allowed to move your artwork. So, oh, how nice. Look at this. I like this map you did here. Now, if you're really brave, you'll take a little text note and put your name, or just put your initials or something, if you want to put your name underneath what you did. And that would be very cool. I just need to find my map, and I'll put my map on there too, but I can't seem to find mine at the moment. But you all saw mine. You don't need mine. Awesome, Leah. That looks great. I love these. These look so cool. So if any of you are new to Jamboard, you're probably not. You're probably all experts. I can use it all the time, but Jamboard is really super great if you're not familiar with it. If your students have their Chromebooks in the classroom, what I do for art a lot of times is I'll have them, if we do a digital design, I'll have them then upload it to Jamboard, and then you have an instant virtual bulletin board. And it turns out really great. Nice. This is so awesome, Chad. I'm so glad you invited me to do this.
Finally got one up there.
There you go. These are great. And I'm going to move some around a little bit. So that's me. Don't panic if you see yours being moved about. I'm just making a little room. Yeah.
And
One
thing I'll do to folks, that are thinking about this, I wouldn't be afraid of really allowing time for students to really engage with this kind of project. Like for instance, if they're reading a piece of informational text, or if it's in literature, or if they're it's a math concept, or something like that. I think allowing the time to allow the students to really fully engage the material and then create the content, the learning experience, I think, is probably greater than maybe a lot of the lectures, or the lessons that you could give, in terms of talking and so forth, to allow the students to really get into it. Because I've found in some of these projects that students who you think are the least engaged in academic endeavors will put in a crazy amount of work to do this kind of stuff. And I've seen it myself in terms of students who I literally was just shocked at not only the quality of their work, but really the quality of their thinking, which completely was at odds with maybe what, their behaviors that maybe they're exposing in class. So I really encourage folks to, regardless of your subject area, to really utilize this in their classrooms.
Yeah, these are great. And there's another, there are a couple of other pages I was just kind of scrolling through. So if you don't have room on the front page, I have to say, when I look at these are really impressive. And I will also say, look at the use of arrows, right? That really stands out. That really stands out. The one from next to Leah's, the one that has home written in really cool font. And then the one next to that, look at the arrows, right? And then the next row down, you see some arrows. So this is another way to kind of debrief and reflect upon the process. If you have students sharing theirs all together, and you can say, what are some common tools we've used to emphasize things, right? Look at the different line weight. A lot of you, Monica, you've got very straight lines there. Look at the one that, it's in the second row towards the right there. It has that really swirly line. I'm going to just move. There you go. Sorry, I didn't mean to click yours out of the way, whoever that was. The swirling lines, right? That's another cool. Some of you are really like, look at you drawing cars. Look at some of you people going for it, right? I kept cars out of mine because I knew I wouldn't know how to do it. But these are great. And then if you look at the next page, I'm just going to skip over here for a minute. Look at this one, a fat deer. That is so great. Look at
that looks like the deer that I worry about hitting every time I get on the freeway in the morning.
Times 7, you said, times 7, this person, right?
They're gonna run out in front of the road. Be careful.
I know. And look at these, Italy and Spain. See, I just think that this is really wonderful. And I hope that I've not making everybody dizzy here. I hope that those of you that are familiar with this, that maybe I've maybe given you a little bit more to think about with it. I hope the sky's the limit. I'm telling you, and people are doing them all over the place. I first heard about sketch notes about 5 years ago, when a friend of mine presented, and she came up and she had like 5,000 of these tiny little sketchbooks. She goes and buys these super thin ones, and she takes them wherever she travels. And I'm like, well, that becomes like a job on your vacation. So I was a little bit unsure about that. And then I thought, oh, but you take pictures and do it afterwards. So anyway.
Well, I really appreciate this session, Jane. Thank you so much for taking the time. And thank you all for participating in tonight's session. Again, this was really fascinating, and I really enjoy, not only hearing the ways that some of this is being used or being conceptualized, for our educators, but also just the idea of sharing with each other. And so I really appreciate that. I want to remind everybody that I will be sending an email that will have another link, that have the link to this presentation, along with the links to those books, because I'm going to look them up and make sure that you have the, all the links to go ahead and click on them. And of course, if you have colleagues who might find this interesting, certainly share the presentation with them, but it will be available in a video form, probably in about a couple of weeks. After this series is over, it'll be available at mea.org for our Center for Leadership and Learning. So look for that there. So thank you again, everybody, for joining. This is our first session. We will be doing another session tomorrow. So if you are an arts educator or you know some arts educators and you need some money, which I suspect you do if you're an arts educator, we're going to be talking with Chanswan Badro of the Michigan Arts and Culture Council, which is basically one of the clearinghouses for grant funding in the state, in addition to other things that they do around arts and culture. So join us tomorrow at 6 p.m. For that. And thank you again, Jane, for this session. And I hope you all, I see the sun poking out. What is going on here? I better go look at that. I thank you all for joining us tonight, and have a good evening. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. And if